Hello, my name is GottChar. I want to talk about some practical shipbuilding stuff today. First of all, we do cross-section. I also want to do adjusted placement, tilting wings forward, stacking, collision box with the terrain, burning, wing versus brake landing, honeycomb materials, tilted cores and engines, engine types, light scripts, warp, docking, element number back, and HG versus normal hybrid haulers. But let's start with the cross-section. So, what is the cross section? Well, it is what determines your air resistance as you fly. The normal direction I fly, I don't know about you, forward. So what's interesting for me is I click on that little cloud there, I click on cross section, and I check the frontal cross section, currently 93.5. And this craft, which are modification of a normal craft I sometimes use, according to the information in the build mode, it goes 770, 767 I think it was. Let's check that out. And the interesting part now about this craft, you may notice a rather large diagonal stabilizer M that I put on it, and those are just a massive air brake. And you see there will be quite a difference in a moment when I, instead of those, use something else, which actually also gives me a little more lift. Now, looking at the speed there, I guess I got the number wrong. But we are 7.9 and nothing really is happening there anymore. So let's return, and I probably will want to speed that up. So here we are again. What's so bad about the cross section? Problem is that the game does in order to simplify things. It checks the rightmost and leftmost coordinate, the bottommost and the uppermost coordinate, and then just draws a rectangle, and that is your cross section. That actually means that if I was to place boxes like this, it wouldn't make any difference. That thing here now is the same as the well, a bit more back actually. Cross section is unchanged. We're at 93. We're at 93. I should also be able to, of course, draw something here. Always takes like a second or two to update, but no, that's unchanged. So the stabilizers that I've got here in the back are just as big as these huge voxel blocks that are placed in the way. And I guess you would agree that this isn't exactly aerodynamic. I mean, if I sold you a craft now, which has those monstrous blocks in the back, you would tell me, hey, why do why does it have to be so big? Isn't there a more aerodynamic solution, maybe, to place those with things? Why does it have to be so huge? Oh. Yep, still 93.5. Third frontal cross section 93.5. And of course, if I go over here and pull up to there, we're still at 93.5. So, I understand that it's kind of stupid to have those huge blocks there. Two black blocks there all together, probably as big as the whole rest of the craft. And I can actually still make them bigger, and they don't add anything, because that whole area that I'm now covering cross-section wise is already covered by those diagonal stabilizers, because this black block has the same lowest x and highest x coordinate, and the same lowest z and highest z coordinate as that stabilizer there in the back. So, oh, something I added is actually slightly bigger. I guess I added one block too many. Now to say 93.5. So, front cross section right now, 93.5. And if I take those huge voxel blocks away, front cross section is still 93.5. Because those stabilizers have just the same cross section as those huge voxels that I placed there. So, what do? Well, I just undo my changes to the craft that I made earlier. Ah, lovely. Now we are at 44.8, so it's less than halved. I replaced the instead of the 2 stabilizers, I placed 4 wings. 2 vertical, because I still want to have some amount of vertical stabilization, you know, so that if I turn, the craft actually follows. Some people like that. That's my craft. Yeah, I like it as well, you know. Make stuff easier. And I added two horizontal wings to still have my amount of lift. And as you can see, we are significantly faster already. I like it. So, in other words, don't do diagonal wings, diagonal stabilizers, diagonal ailerons, or anything like that. The exception would obviously be if they are somewhere in the back of the craft and they are at a spot where the cross section is already taken, or whatever you want to call it. So if you don't make the craft bigger as seen from the front by placing them, no issue then. But if you, and that is usually the case, have them somewhere on the outside as a kind of an extremity, sticking into the air, like I had it there, no, don't do that. It just slows down your craft. Don't do diagonal wings. And that also extends to if you have some kind of diagonal outer wall on your craft and you place air brakes on that or any other elements, that also means that those always have to be seen as a huge rectangle. So yeah, anything there on the outside, just place it vertically, place it horizontally, and then you're safe. And it obviously also depends on the size of the craft. If you have a huge L core and somewhere in the back you have diagonal M wings, it doesn't matter that much. But especially if you have something light that is supposed to go fast, don't do diagonal wings. One minor addendum, by the way, to the cross-section thing. You see I'm currently at 101. You will see that due to how it's calculated, and again, the cross-section of this wing would pretty much be like, you know, that. Total x, lowest x and highest x, lowest z and highest z. So that is then the cross-section of the wing. However, if you're only partially covering that part, that voxel space, it doesn't count. And that means, for example, that wing here actually only inhabits this amount now, so only half as much. As you can see, the cross-section right now, 97.9. Before I moved those, we were at 101. So even with normal wings that you place horizontally, it really does make a difference whether you do like that and that. Difference is tiny, but it doesn't cost you anything. Yeah, think about it, your choice. But I actually wanted to show you adjustor placement now. And because of that, I made this very nice looking example. Very nice looking example shape. I hope it looks remotely like a ship. And it does have two important things. It does have a front, it does have a back, and as you can see in the front, we've got that tilted part here. And what people would usually do now is somewhere here in the front, because people want to be as far away from the center of mass. You see that cross there. People do know, hey, having a long lever is a good idea. So I want to be as far as possible in the front, and not somewhere, you know, in the middle. You don't place your adjuster here and expect a lot of turning force. So people do place it far away from the center of mass. That is something that most people already do. But what they don't consider is the direction. You can actually see if I was to place it here, we're only looking at the yaw. That would give me a yaw of 10.5. If I placed it here, it would actually give me a yaw of 27. 27 meganewtons here, but only 10 meganewtons here. Of course, the further I go to the front, the more. But there, 30. Ooh, nice. well, if I go here, I've got 28. It's almost no difference between here and here. Why is that? If I was to place it here, you now have to look at in which direction is that force applied and where. And if you just follow the line through the adjuster and go to all the way where you are then closest to that center of mass here, then you will notice that my lever now is only from here. Hey, from here to where does the center of mass go? Out there. Okay, that's 43 blocks from there to there. That would be my lever. That's 43 blocks. If I place it here, then again, I want to go along that line until I can't get no closer to my center of mass. And that would actually be the difference from here to here. Then I just realized it's diagonal, so I can't measure it. But yeah, that distance here would be my lever if I place my adjuster here. It's not that much difference. I mean, what would be great, of course, is if I took that thing and did not have it. Didn't have it tilted, but actually oriented the way it would be here, but all the way in the front. And if I do that, why does it now show 2.6 meganewton? Okay, wait, here it says 2.61 meganewton. 1.8. 1.6. Right, so here it's 1.6. Here it's 1.8. And like that, it's 2.6. So that is definitely the best. Obviously, like that, it looks a bit stupid. Now, I think we agree on that. That looks a bit stupid. Be creative. Get some kind of voxel stuff there. And you can just, you know, place it like that easily. Because that is now a bit too small. Think of, you are more creative than I, okay? Think of some kind of nice voxel shape that you can have your adjuster in such a way that it's all the way in the front, or pretty much all the way in the front, but also in a way that it's not tilted like this. You don't want it like that. But the idea is that if you follow that line through the way the adjuster goes to where it hits the shortest connection to my center of mass, that connection there, that has to be as long as possible. Or in other words, if you look at the center of mass through your adjuster, through the adjuster at your center of mass, you then will adjust it to just go sideways. So if it's like this, I'm not looking at the adjuster from the side right now, I'm looking at it diagonally. If it's like that, I'm pretty much looking at it from the side, and that's what I want to have. Ideally, of course, if you want it to be sideways, I would be like that. That's pretty much best case scenario. But if it's like that, that's exactly the same lever. So that works as well. But you don't want your adjuster to pretty much be pointing away from the center of mass. You want there a 90-degree angle to do that. And then you just have more power. And as you were able to see, it's far more than just 10% power. You ask somebody, or you have the talent yourself, to get that talent for the 10% more adjuster power. You ask somebody, hey, can you boost my craft? And then you're very happy if somebody has the adjuster handling, just to squeeze out 5% more power. If you just place the adjuster right, you would have far more than that. Noticeably, the noticeable dimensions here, something like that. Something like that. They are bad ideas. You see, this graph, for example, as it's pretty much empty, has a center of mass so far in the back. This adjuster here is still an adjuster to the left. So whether I place it here or there, it actually still tries to, that's still an adjuster that will try to move your nose to the left. And here, it's just really, really stupid. I could have it all the way here in the back. Now it would actually try to help me yaw to the right. But now the lever is only from here, there. It's super short. So it's pointless. And given how the game doesn't have couples in any way, there's no point in countering the force, the torque that you get in the front with some amount of torque in the back so that it turns nicely. That doesn't exist in this game. You just have that adjuster which is directly trying to rotate your center of mass. There is no couple in this game. So you want to place it where you get the most torque, and that is furthest away from the center of mass, and that usually means in the nose. So having a large amount of adjusters somewhere here in the back, that's a cosmetic thing. It just makes you heavier. If you have them in the front and if you have them at the right angle, they're just far, far better, far, far stronger. That's something that you would want to do. Okay, the next topic is now wing placement. And before I come to that, I actually have to talk about stacking. The issue with element stacking is that while it is allowed, it's still kind of like a legal exploit. It's a bit of a grey area, so I don't really want to make a video on how to do it. Just ask somebody in the Discord, it's quite common knowledge how to do it. In essence, it is perfectly possible to just have elements clipping within each other. So if I wanted to have this engine positioned there to save some space, that is possible, people do that. If you see a craft that doesn't really have a lot of visible elements on the outside, there are plenty of examples. There are some shipbuilders who do it. If you see a ship that is very clean on the outside, similar like this, but prettier, you can be quite sure that that craft either doesn't really have carry capacity, because it only has a very small token amount of wings which are somewhere in the... Damn it. It only has a token amount of wings which are somewhere like here in the back. Or they actually have a normal or even very high amount of wings or even L stabilizers. You just don't see them because it's like 30 L stabilizers per side, but they are all pushed into the space that would usually only be able to hold like 2 of them. That again, that's a very normal thing. And if you see any craft that can haul 5, 10, 15, whatever kilotons of Alioth, but doesn't really have a lot of wings on the outside, yeah, that's probably exploited. Anyway, if you want to do it the normal way, if you want to do it the honest way, you have a bit of an issue, because that would mean that you have to place a lot of wings, or stabilizer ailerons, of course. And those you would have to place all in the back. And even if you do that, you will then quickly see that that's still not really getting you there. So what you would really need is some kind of huge wing tower here in the back, and then of course you use the mightiest of Oxymount thing to, kind of cover it up in such a way that only the back of the wing is visible. Oh, white plastic and flashlight is really great. But there's one other thing that you can do, and that's something that I really like to do. And some people think it's really ugly. But then again, I think using exploits or not being able to carry anything is even more ugly. So, I've got my wings on the outside. And the way you place them in such a way that they don't obstruct, I would recommend the following. Wait a second. Bit of a setup. Looks good. Glass panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 26. That's a good distance. Okay. The issue at hand is if you were to place your wings in a row, they would just obstruct. If we place them like that, you already see there's a minor issue now. They have been obstructed. That doesn't look good. They don't have full power like that. They don't have full power. No, I don't like it. Those in the back obviously don't have anything behind them, so they are happy. That yellow circle there is lovely and unobstructed, and no issue there. But those guys in the front are rather unhappy. Those especially, because they have something behind them, and if they have something behind them, they don't like that. And that is why I place those glass panels. So, take those wings off again. Not too many, not too many, not too many. Okay. What I'm just going to do now, I'm going to place a wing in such a way. Let's place it all the way to the front. No, there. Good. Alright. Actually, the one that is furthest in the back doesn't really, those wings here were unobstructed anyway. More of a more of a thing that matters for the others. So I'll place them in such a way that they're actually facing outwards now. And I placed the glass panels so that I would have an easy time placing them. And now that they're facing outwards, there isn't anything behind them. And again, that one to the frontmost tip. There we are, 15 wings. That would be quite the tower here otherwise. If I want to have 5, I want to have 15 wings, one above the other. So now they are spread out, and so far I don't see any obstruction. As it is custom in this game, they may occasionally, one of them may occasionally be slightly reddish. But for the most part, especially compared to how it was before, yeah, perfect. So now, obviously, I don't have that smooth outside look anymore. Sadly, I have to use wings. But yeah, there are pretty much 3 ways you can do it. Either you just can't carry a lot and have your low amount of wings somewhere in the back. Or you do what plenty of big shipbuilders do, exploit. Or you do it this way. You just have a high amount of wings. They're visible on the outside, but they don't obstruct each other. And now you can just lift a lot. Hooray! Alright, next one. Collision box. By collision box, I want to talk about the collision of a craft with the terrain. And there's a bit of an oddity. So again, this has to do with the game simplifying the your construct and deciding on how it collides with the terrain, and in order to keeping the amount of calculations down or whatever, the game actually treats your whole craft as a rectangle when it comes to colliding with any obstacles. So what the game is going to do, it will just check, okay, what is your frontmost point at any. What is the most in the front? What is the most in the back? What is the most to the left? That would be that wingtip. The most to the right. What is the most on the bottom? And what is the highest point? And after I checked those, it pretty much just draws a huge rectangle that has all of those points on the inside. And I think this craft is already too big to do what I tried to do here right now. Section area too large? Yeah, of course it was. Now imagine I was able to also, have those stabilizers in here. But yeah, it really does one big rectangular box that has everything just inside. And that is a collision box. Now, if that is the case, that means if I'll take this craft and tilt it sideways like this, I will not be able to place it on the ground. Usually you would expect that I can take this and place it on the ground in such a way that the tip of that stabilizer and the tip of that stabilizer are both pretty much touching the ground, or, you know, close enough. Being tinkled by the grass? Oh no. Oh no, you can't do that. So if I try to, in any way possible, to set it down while being diagonal, I just can't do that. It will automatically go like this. I really try to. Now, have it like this, and I'm, okay, only one hand, only the mouse. I'm trying to push it down. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Because again, in regards to touching the ground, you can pretty much draw all the way down here, or all the way over there. Actually, a bit lower, as you see. That thing there, that is part of that huge rectangle that I was trying to show. So no, the game will behave. Whether I try to put it down this way, you actually can't see the corner now in the. I'll try to put it down, and just like it behaves like this. And now it's obvious. I mean, obviously there's those wide voxels. I can't go to the ground. But if I try to do it on the other side, it will behave exactly the same way as if there are those voxels there. Because the collision box is just done like that. It's a huge rectangle. A huge rectangular box that includes everything. And therefore, yep, can't do that. That also means if you were to build a ship that is diagonally in the build box, will not be able to maneuver it down to the ground. So if I was to take my core, tilt it by 45 degrees to the side, and then have, you know, my normal wings going up and left, and the wings on the right would be down and right, and the craft is generally tilted, you can do that. But it will have the fun effect that you're actually unable to just land flat on the ground. Alright, next up is something about landing. Brakes. So let's have a quick look at that. I only have one air brake on this. I've got 0.73 G forward thrust right now. A bit more than 1 G base thrust. Off we go. But while I'm climbing, I'm going to quickly talk about burn damage. So, you probably have noticed that if you go a good bit over 1k, most craft it's something like 1050, that your craft starts taking damage due to the atmosphere, due to friction. So, first of all, the value depends on your frontal cross section. So another reason not to use vertical wings, you know, we have that. And by the way, if you wonder why I'm say slightly sluggish, I'm juggling some engines. So, the speed at which you do burn depends on your cross section. Now, any kind of normal-sized M core, even a bigger S core, will already have a burn speed of around 1050 on Adioth. Normal Atmo, so you should usually just don't go above 1050 with any kind of normal craft that isn't a tiny shuttle. Otherwise, you start burning. As you are at that speed, you see the little red flame thingy there in the front of your craft, and if you have that for an extended period of time and it's got enough intensity, then you just slowly take damage. There's already a tiny bit, if you only have it a bit visible, that's still just the early warning sign that, hey, you're about to burn. If it gets a bit stronger, you then actually do take damage. The formula, that is, or the way it works, seems to be, and what I know, but it seems to be the same that is used for taking PvP damage. So essentially the atmosphere is, it's shooting you from the front, or shooting you from, well, whichever direction you are traveling towards right now. However, as in PvE, you can't take any damage to voxels if that random damage from the front is hitting any kind of voxels. You don't actually take damage. And that also means that if you, at least as seen from the front, don't have any elements exposed, and then a bit more, how do I put it? If the elements are just not visible from the front, that's not enough. They actually have to be kind of buried like 1 voxel deep, and then it works. That means you want to have the adjusters really like dug into the voxel and only have like a little hole, a 1 voxel missing there, as an opening for the adjuster to work. And then you are actually somewhat safe from burn damage. The issue there is, of course, that if you want to have it that way, I'm climbing too hard, by the way. If you want to have that, that would obviously mean that you're not allowed to have any wings really sticking out on the side. And that brings us back to the stacking thing from before, and the general, you know, the wings diagonally tilted forward thing that I did there. It means that again you have to choose. Either you just don't fly above 1050 in Atmo, or you have all your wings in the back and therefore you can't really carry that much, ignoring AGG for now. Or of course you just cheat, which is also a thing. So the patented heat shield technology that's been going around there. Well, you just dig in the few elements that you have to have exposed to the side, which essentially just means the adjusters. Don't have any glass or whatever to actually have a first-person perspective view there. So no kind of a cockpit window there. And, well, you just cheat by stacking all the stuff into one space in the middle and in the back. The secret ingredient. Cheating! Surprise. So, that is so much about burning. I think, how about you just don't fly above 1050? That works. Another thing about that is some of those ships don't actually go 1050, they just display that. So that is the second last one on the list. I actually wanted to quickly show now landing without brakes. And sadly, I slightly overdid it with the amount of cargo. I think I'm gonna speed it up a tiny bit. So at that point, I'm actually talking about how, in order to get full space power, I need to be above 6,270 meters. And you can actually see how now I do have full power, but a moment ago I didn't. So as you're only at about 3.5 kilometers up, it does show that your space engine is obviously glowing. It's obviously on, but it's not fully on. So even though you may have 1.5 G in build mode displayed, you don't really have 1.5 G while you're still trying to climb. You only have the full power if you are above that 6.27 kilometers. My mic is cutting out all the time. That is why I'm doing the voiceover now in post production. I suck at making YouTube videos. The thing is, I'm used to streaming, and I'm usually shouting over Iron Maiden and Motorhead. And then my mic doesn't really have a problem picking the whole sound up. But when I'm in a silent room and just talking, my mic setting obviously needs a bit of an adjustment. But I didn't make that adjustment, so my mic is cutting out all the time. Which is why you can now hear my voice, because I have to do the bloody voiceover. Anyway, I further talk about life, love, philosophy, and the need to make a coffee, and how I'm gonna speed the whole thing up now. Yeah, sorry again about the whole microphone cutting out part. I'll try to work on that at some part in the future. By the time the U is released, I think I have it. Yeah, great. The voice is too weak in that part of the video as well. Right. So they are now talking a bit about honeycomb, because apparently I've got too much time flying around the bloody ball there. But honeycomb, what is to say that obviously honeycomb does essentially just slow you down because it increases your cross section. It doesn't help with environment damage in regards to crashing. It only helps in regards to burning if you impair yourself, but stuff that I talked about earlier. So it's not really that useful. On the other hand, if you have any kind of normal craft and you're using any light material like plastic, aluminum, carbon fiber, wood, which by the way doesn't burn more or less, then the total mass of your honeycomb on the craft is probably going to be something like 3 or 5%. Doesn't really matter that much. And of course, if you have a hauler, you probably carry like 3, 4, 5 times your own mass on top of your own mass in form of cargo. So again, that 5% then quickly becomes 1%. Doesn't really matter. There's no big point also that obviously in using lithium, any of those extreme light materials compared to plastic. Just keep your craft a bit smaller. If you want to make it a warp shuttle, only use 2M Atmo and 2M space engines on the warp shuttle, and then you're really light already. Using lithium, however, instead of plastic, it's not that much of a thing. So just save yourself the money. Quite pointless. Also, actually, aluminum is cheaper than plastic due to the plastic talents currently not working. So if you want to make honeycomb and there are talents available, or if you want to buy some large amounts, just go for the aluminum due to the plastic talent not working. Great, now my voiceover was actually faster than what that guy said there in the video, meaning I now have to fill another 10 seconds with pointless chatter, which I'm doing right now. I hope you haven't noticed yet. Now I'm going to say something like, bear with me, or something to just, fill another gap, and now we go back to the normal audio. I'm sure I forgot something now in the voiceover. Given that plastic talent doesn't work. Speaking of plastic talent not working, I should probably mention that all of this is now done during patch 0.24, so some of the things I mentioned may be outdated. I can't update the video itself, just read through the description if somebody says anything wrong. And yeah, so obviously some stuff may be outdated. Alright, to quote the words that your father regrets the most, I am quite high and time to do something stupid. You may have seen that I don't really have any interesting amount of air brakes on this, and I'm carrying far too much. And you probably wondered by now already, why the hell am I even up here? So this is about air braking. This is about using air brakes versus wings for landing. So first of all, as you've seen, even though I am carrying quite a lot of cargo, so much in fact that I was having a good amount of struggle even getting into space. I'm already climbing again. I think my lowest point there was 1400 meters. So still a lot of space left to the ground. Meaning that entering Atmo wasn't really that much of an issue. I have a good amount of wings. I like using wings. As long as I have wings, I don't really need brakes. I am a bit too far from my destination, and given that I'm doing a video right now, I don't really want to wait forever, so I'm actually accelerating again. But of course now just sail over there. Yeah. The thing with the air brakes is, it is quite convenient to just hold your brakes until you're on the ground. Also, it does have more of a kind of spaceship feeling, I guess, to just go where you want to go and then zoom, descend from the heavens. I totally get it. Some people don't play a sci-fi game to then fly a cargo plane in a cargo plane way. By cargo plane way, I obviously mean that you are flying at a very low angle. You don't go very steep up or very steep down. I'm actually kind of steep right now. You do want to just point upwards and go, and on your way to landing again, you don't want to, do this. You don't want to very slowly approach some kind of landing area and then very slowly decrease altitude and finally touchdown. So I'm opposite right now. for demonstration. So my hoppers were already active there a moment ago. I'm still going 280, so I could without any issue just pull up again. So no, I was just waiting until my hovers activate, and only after my hovers activated, I then started braking. I remember that I only have one air brake on this. I think I've got slightly above 1G. Where is it? Oh no, 1.9G. I've got 2G here. So this would be too low for doing a proper brake landing, as in, just stop somewhere in mid-air and then hold brakes and go down. You can land with just no air brakes at all. You can land any craft of any size, including that kind of size. You can land without any air brakes. We'll just roll out a good bit. If you set your hovers to disable thrust along gravity, you can then just pull a bit up, and then your hovers will actually decelerate you. You can land anything without air brakes, no kind of weird exploits, AGG, somebody using maneuver tool on you, or any other kind of weird stuff required. You can just take any kind of normal craft, fill it with, well, that one 10 kilotons, and then go into space and then land without air brakes. Space brakes are kind of required, so that you don't go towards the planet at 50,000 kilometers per hour, and then 50 is too much. Not to get the idea. The thing about the air brakes is, if you want to do a brake landing, obviously you need a large amount of air brakes. Those have to be placed somewhere, and those do weigh something. And some people do like using that, and they do like the kind of flying style with that. Also, depending on what kind of custom scripts you use, it's maybe a good idea. I personally do like the cargo plane feeling, and I do see advantages in that, but they are not really that tangible, and you can't really say one is better than the other. It's a matter of taste. Just be aware that there's not only air braking and hovering down to the ground, there's also just flying like a cargo plane. Maybe you want to give it a try. Honeycomb material, I covered that already. Woo! Tilted engines, yay! So, tilted engines. You may have noticed that I've got tilted engines on that, which brings us to tilted engines. I definitely get a pull-ups of that script. So, how does that even work? You may have noticed I do like talking about cross-section and stuff like that, as if fuel was in any way important or expensive, which it isn't. However, given me being German, I obviously try to be a bit more efficient, and that is why I do like having low air resistance. I know, it gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling in my German organ or something like that. I do like having a low air resistance. So I do like having a low cross-section. I just like it. So, what even is the cross-section of this? And now you'd be like, what? That's not low at all? Yeah, the thing is, I actually have to activate the gyro to show it correctly, because I have a tilted core. There. Ignore that thing being red, that stops in 5 seconds. So, if you have the engines tilted, you have a bit of a problem. Because if you rotated it by more than 3 ticks, by ticks, by the way, I mean, you play something, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is what I mean by ticks. And that is now 4 ticks, say 45 degrees, and when you do that, you will notice, if you look at the ticks, this one now counts as vertical. If I just type in longitudinal or something like that, that doesn't do anything. Unless you do any kind of very cool lure stuff, the whole thing here where you can write stuff, it pretty much doesn't apply to you. The option to set engine ticks is just for you to read which ones they have, and then not touch it. Anyway, those count as vertical. If they count as vertical, that means that they only activate if I hold space. Now, if I do want to do some kind of longer journey, I don't want to hold space all the time. it's a bit inconvenient. I just want those to be active as I, just give throttle, as in scroll forward, just like normal engines would do. I'm finally not red anymore. So you have an issue there, and you can either write some kind of very cool Lua script that actually kind of gets that right, or if you like me and you like the vanilla Lua stuff, the stock interface, also just tilt the core. So what does core tilting actually do here now? I have that gyro, so I can set the orientation of the craft according to that gyro if I want to. But that's really just something that I do for debugging and testing and showing. So for example, I need to activate the gyro to correctly read any of my stats. As you can see, I currently have a thrust of 9.1 G, and if I do this like that, I suddenly only have 6 G. The reason for that is, as long as it takes my tilted core as a reference point and actually counts my hover engines as forward thrust. I don't want that. If I want to check my stats, I use the gyro, which is positioned that way. Now everything is in the normal way. You see also that my center of mass line here is horizontal, and now all of those stats are correct and for flying forwards, including this cross section here below 800. The moment, however, I deactivate the gyro, I could just as well just remove it. If I deactivate the gyro, and therefore I am using the core for orientation, you see how that center of mass line is now going skywards. So why is it going skywards? Well, I've got the tilted core. What does that mean? It does mean that technically my Atmo engines are now actually pointing downwards, because they go in that direction, but forwards is up there. So they are technically pointing downwards right now to some minor degree. And those space engines, which had the vertical take earlier, now count as longitudinal. Because my core is rotated by 2 ticks, so 22.5 degrees. That means those are now pointing 22.5 degrees downwards instead of being on 0. And those are now pointing 22.5 degrees upwards. However, 22.5 degrees is still close enough, so it counts as normal forward thrust. And that means all of those engines, the Atmos and the space, are now counting as forward engines and therefore activate if I give throttle. And for the space engines, obviously, if I'm in space. And doing that, I don't need any kind of fancy lure or whatever. I can just do it like that. And now, if I wanted to carry something very heavy, it's quite nice. Because usually, I don't know about others, I don't know about people with loads of engines and a low amount of wings, but usually, I try to leave Atmo, and I've got my nose up like that, and I've got a bit of the issue that usually my Atmo and space engines, both pointing just forward, they really accelerate me more along the surface, so I get more and more speed, but they don't really help me go higher and higher up. The moment, however, that I nose up more and more and more, I eventually get to the point where my stabilizers and wings and so on might stall. I mean, the stabilizers only stall at, what is it now, 70, 75 degrees, something like that? So you would have to really nose up a lot to get to that point. But you may notice I also have some wings in the back, and maybe this is especially interesting for somebody who's using ailerons, actually, because they have such a low stall angle. Like, not that important for stabilizers, but more important for wings and ailerons, actually. But maybe you also don't like how you have to nose up so much. Maybe it's a bit stupid for roleplaying. So the nice thing about having them like that is space engines don't actually push you that much forward. They pretty much just push you up. So if I nose like this, then all the way to 3.5 kilometers, 20 meters, the Atmo engines mostly just give me forward thrust, and of course to some degree also lift me, just like my wings do lift me. But the moment I'm quite high there, and my wings give me more and less lift, and I also now get faster and faster. I actually just want to get up, not faster along the surface. And now if I just nose up like this, those engines are really only lifting me up and help me leave Atmo, and that is why with that configuration you can get a lot more mass off the planet than you would otherwise do. I couldn't carry as much into space with this ship as I currently can if I just had those engines the normal way. The other thing is, of course, that it's a bit of a different look. I like it, and you can have a craft that is just as seen from the front a bit slimmer. Oh great, maneuvered it too much. Now, say about the overall shape what you want. I would understand if you think it's a bit ugly. Although it does have a very nice bathroom up there. But in general, if you want to have a ship that, as seen from the front, is quite slim, then that is definitely something that you may want to consider. Okay, then let's talk about engine types. Engine types. So, the cheapest engines are just the basic engines. And they are tier 1. So they only need the cheapest ores. And the moment you go to tier 2, uncommon, tier 3, advanced, or tier 4, which is rare, you have to, let's call it specialize. You have to take one of the 4 engines with a special attribute. Most used one is definitely military. Military just have 20% more power, but they also need 20% more fuel per Newton output. So that means that per time unit, they actually need 44% more. But given how they have more power, they need 20% more power, more fuel for what they do. So they cost about 2.5 times as much as a basic engine. That goes for any uncommon compared to basic engine, and that is obviously quite the investment for just having 20% more power. However, if you can spare that money, fuel is still quite cheap, and it means that you can just have a bit of a smaller engine wall in the back of your craft, and have the same amount of power. That is obviously quite helpful for any kind of art bots. Like if you were to build a huge Iron Man with a XL engine in the butt, and still want to be able to fly with 2 kilotons of cargo, it obviously is a good idea if you just want to leave Atmo as fast as possible. That would be the craft with most of at least my haulers. I just want to go off into space, and then I can either go orbital or to another planet or moon or whatever. And then it's probably a good idea to just go with Atmos. Also a good idea, obviously, on warp shuttles. So on any kind of normal, very light warp shuttle, you will just see 2 uncommon military space, 2 uncommon military Atmo, M each, and that gets you into space with a warp drive, and a few other elements which are required to, fly, and off you go. Of course, you can just use tier 3 and be a bit faster. So those are the militaries. And they are pretty much the engine of choice for most people. If they want to spend a tiny bit more money, just go for military and have a bit more power. But if you don't have a heavy hauler and you just have some kind of small craft, then you probably will be able to be fast enough to just burn anyway. You don't really need the extra power. What's very nice, however, is to just have a much better warm-up time. So I can easily glow with this if I wanted to. I'm actually accelerating already. So that's on most smaller craft. It's not an issue of getting a high max speed, because you would glow anyway. But what's really nice is if you look at my throttle level right now. I go to full throttle and then I just zoom, instantly go. And that is not only more fun, but also, of course, has a practical value if you want to, for example, do scanning, or if you have some kind of small pocket ship and just want to, just fly over that 1 kilometer to whatever other part of your base, visit your neighbor. Those are maneuver engines. They have half the warm-up time, and as you go into a higher tier, obviously again half the warm-up time and so on. So that is very, very nice. And they also only need 90% fuel, and then again only 90% of that if you go to tier 3 and so on and so on. So maneuvers are quite nice as well and definitely have their uses. The other two available engines, however, which are safe and freight, are kind of pointless. Yeah. The freight engine has double warm-up time, which is just as annoying as it sounds. Even if you have talents, it's still twice as long as it would have if you were using a basic engine. Doesn't really help there with the talents. I mean, if it's double, it's double. You reduce it by 30% and then double it, it's still double to what you would otherwise have with a basic engine. They have a reduced fuel cost, just like the maneuvers. So they don't really have any benefit over maneuvers. They have that huge drawback of having a longer warm-up time. And if you go to tier 3, it's double again. And tier 4, it's double again. So do they have any benefit? Yeah, well, they are lighter. Being lighter, however, doesn't really matter that much. I mean, on that craft, for example, when I'm fully loaded, then about, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20%, about 15% of what I'm moving is actually my craft. The rest is fuel and cargo. So that craft, however, only a very low percentage of that is my engines. And having my engines a tiny bit lighter doesn't really do anything. So, no. You could argue that if you had some kind of transporter where you want to warp and you don't mind the time, you could argue that the freight engine is better, but then again, no, it isn't. Because you can just use military engines. Use military engines which have more power, and therefore you use a lower amount of engines to go where you can warp. Freight engines are quite pointless, to be honest, unless for some weird role-playing reason you really like having a long warm-up time. I mean, you just already give full throttle and then you press a few buttons and check your systems and whatever, and then a minute later you actually have enough power to take off. Hey, if that's your thing, go with freight engines. Otherwise, they're completely pointless. And they're probably the least used thing in the game next to pipes. And of course, safe engines. Safe engines have the reduced warm-up time, just like maneuvers. They have reduced fuel cost, but they also have reduced power. So they need the same amount of fuel per newton they output. You don't gain anything there. The advantage they have is higher resistance, so you take less damage from PvP. As PvP, however, is usually done in space, and again with space-only crafts, I don't think there are too many people who have a hybrid ship, now with stabilizers and Atmo engines and air brakes and so on, go into space, do PvP there, and then return to the... They don't do that, that's not a thing. PvP people want to have their 20G or something like that acceleration, so they can catch up with somebody before he's out of range. In order to do that, they just don't like carrying a lot of Atmo engines with them, so there's no point whatsoever using safe Atmo engines. Just ignore they exist. And for the space engines, I think having the high acceleration is just so much more important than having a bit more resistance in the back of your craft. I'm unaware of PvP people using safe engines. If you know of somebody who uses safe engines in PvP, let me know in the comments below. Such a YouTuber. No. Good. Yeah, well, so much for the engines. So the actual choice is just, if you don't have a lot of money, just use basics. You want to have more power, don't care about the warm-up time or the fuel, go for militaries. And if you just want to go somewhere right now, and it's not long distance, and you travel a lot in Atmo, go for maneuvers. That's it, pretty much. I personally actually really like using my space engines as maneuvers and my Atmo engines as military. Reason for that is, the moment I'm high enough to have my space engines activate, I want them to activate right now. And as I usually have my space engines on for a lot longer than my Atmo engines, I actually do like the reduced fuel consumption. So yeah, I usually go military on that one as well. Military Atmo and maneuver space. And if it's something very small, or if I want to stop and go for scanning, I use maneuver Atmos. So what's next? Next up, warp drives. This is going to be quite quick. So, what do you need? You need a warp drive. What does a warp drive look like? I should probably, if I talk about warp drives, show the warp drive. This is a warp drive. Well, now you know. Good. That is obviously also a warp drive. If you want to warp somewhere, you need a warp drive and warp cells. And you need a ship that is able to take a warp drive into space. Because you first have to go into space. The distance from the planet that you need depends on the planet. But you really have to be a good bit out there, not just leave atmosphere. Have to go a bit further. For Alio, is it 150 kilometers or something like that? It's not 150 kilometers, but just so you know, it's a good bit. And given that the warp drive weighs, how much does it weigh? I should probably have checked that before. As the warp drive weighs 31.36 tons, as I know by heart, you obviously need some minor amount of power. So something that's just a bit on the stronger side of a pocket ship. And then you step a warp drive on it, and off you go. So how does that off you go part actually go? Well, you open the map and then you decide on where you want to go. Let's say I want to go to Zinn, then I click on set warp point, and that's all I have to do. And after I placed my warp drive on the ship, I then still have to that mighty connect tool, and then connect my get in there. Connect my pilot seat to my warp drive, which I here can't do because it is already connected. So that is something that you want to do, actually connect it using the connect tool. And after you connected it, you also want to then one more time run your default configuration. Or of course, if you use any fancy script, your fancy script wants to be aware of the fact that there's a warp drive. And that's it. There are two ways that you can feed the warp cells into the drive. Either you don't connect the warp drive to any containers and just have the warp cells in your inventory. That works. You don't need any containers on your shuttle. Or, and that is the way that people usually do it, given how you can't really pocket a warp drive ship anyway. You would have containers connected to the warp drive. You have the warp cells in that container, and that's it. So from seed to warp drive, and from container to warp drive, have those connections, and then the moment you want to warp, it will take the cells right from your container. But just as a side note, you can actually do that with your inventory if the warp drive is not connected to anything. But all you have to do now is obviously get into the seat. And now you see here already, it says destination is Zinnen, it tells you the distance, and it tells you how many warp cells are required. Well, and now what you want to do is obviously take off. Actually, wait, I'm not going to do that. You take off, you fly into space, and at some point then that red warning about planets too close will go away. And when that is the case, you want to either press tab and then just mouse click on off you go, whatever it says, or you can alternatively also just use Alt and J. Alt and J, that is default keybind for the warp drive. And that's pretty much all there is to say about warping. The longer the distance, there's more. The longer the distance, the more warp cells you need. So to Thardus, I think I would need 2, and to Blacobus, I need 7, 8, whatever. The further you want to go, the more you need, and also the heavier you are. And it's directly related. So twice as far, twice the warp cells, twice as heavy, twice the warp cells. Or both, and then you have 4 times the warp cells. That means obviously a warp shuttle should be very, very light. It can still look like a toilet though, perfectly. And if you want to haul something, that means that obviously you have to calculate the warp cells in there. If you can get some ore cheaper on another planet, just calculate how much it will actually cost you in warp cells. Divide that number by the amount of liters you will get, and then you know by how much your liter price will increase. That means for most of the heavier ores, let's say hematite or chromite or malachite or whatever, if you were to import that from one of the slightly further away planets, it increases the price for something like 4 or 5 per liter. So if you can get chromite on Simeon for 50, and on Alioth it would cost you 57, then yeah, that's absolutely worth it. Warp over there, get it, warp back, assuming you don't use a giant ship, so that most of your warp cells are only used for your ship. That's actually a good thing. Do the math. Next thing we have is docking. Yay, docking. How does docking work? Docking requires some, at least 2 ships. Can't do docking with 1 ship. You need 2 ships, and one has to be bigger than the other, and by bigger I mean it needs to have a bigger core than the other. So you can't put an M core on an M core. I see a donut, that's good. So let's demonstrate docking. That is an M core, that is an XS core. But yeah, docking while you're on the ground only works with a maneuver tool. That's the first thing. You can't just fly on it and see that it's docked. When you do dock, I usually recommend actually not putting something on top of it, but actually somewhat sideways. You'll see in a moment why. If you think, yeah, that looks kind of docked, just use the maneuver tool on the larger ship. By the way, I usually call them parent and child, so the white ship here right now would be the parent, and the donut is the child. But yeah, if you use the maneuver tool on the parent and the child moves with it, then it's docked. And the moment it's docked, it can't fall off. I mean, it looks like it should maybe fall off a bit, but no, it won't. No matter how I fly with the white ship now, the donut is not going to fall off in any way. So that's absolutely secure. Also, if I was to crash the white ship, the donut would be absolutely safe. Also means if I generally have an XS core docked on my ship, and that XS core has a container with scrap and a res node, then I will definitely always be safe. A bit of the life pro tip. Maybe they changed it eventually, but currently, no, that's not the thing. You can do that. Generally have an XS core docked on your normal ship and have a res node and some scrap on it. The mass is nowadays actually edited correctly, and also at that point. So if that donut is heavy enough compared to the love boat, then that would mean that my steering is now a tiny bit funny. As long as I'm flying straight, nothing happens, but my turning would be slightly impaired now. So you may want to dock it somewhere more in the middle or central, and not out there. I did, however, say that I do like to dock it on the outside. Because there's a bit more to the docking. First of all, if I don't dock correctly, I'll only have it, somewhere kind of close there, and it's not actually docked, then I do want to give the white ship room to wiggle away. The issue is, if you incorrectly dock, and that can actually kind of randomly happen, there are the occasional bugs in this game. So if I was to incorrectly dock, is that correct? Oh, the colors are not great. If I do incorrectly dock and the white ship doesn't really have space to go, they will kind of wiggle weirdly away, and depending on the terrain and depending on whatever I dock on it, that may be a bit further than I want it, and it may glitch into the nearby factory or something like that. And because of that, it's actually nice to be prepared to always dock in such a way that in case it's an incorrect docking, nothing bad happens. And that usually means just only docking on the side or on some other kind of diagonal part of the parent, or somewhere in the back. If you want to have it in the middle, so that the weight distribution is nice, you can, of course, also just dock it somewhere in the... so good at this. Somewhere in the back. And in case the docking hadn't worked, the wide ship wouldn't have to wiggle away too much and still be free. And you see that now works perfectly, and it's also central. But if I place the donut right on top here, and then I have and happen to have incorrect docking, and if the wide ship now wants to wiggle away, it wouldn't have wiggle space like that. I can't really do incorrect docking like this on purpose, so that can't really be shown. One thing that is worth mentioning now is that I'm always standing on the ground. Why am I standing on the ground? Quite easy, because if I was standing on the ship while trying to do the docking, that wouldn't work. If you try to dock a ship onto a ship and you're not standing on either the ground or a static core, then the docking doesn't work. So this is now finally the worst case scenario. Smack on top, incorrect docked. Don't take damage. Yeah. I've seen ships being completely destroyed in something like this. That's what I don't want to, you know, show it too much. So hey, you be good, no damage please. Not scared at all. So yeah, when docking, please have your feet in the dirt or on a static core, and every time, whenever you did the docking, just maneuver the parent to see if that also moves the child. Make sure you docked correctly. What do we have next? We have the good old element number back coming up. You may have noticed that if you look at the stats of the wing and the stabilizer, that the wing is a better wing than the stabilizer. It just has better stats. Now, if the wing has better stats, and, you know, on paper it's just better at lifting something, why do people use stabilizers? And by now you may even have the suspicion that I sometimes try to look a bit at the theory crafting, and still you will see those stabilizer L's on all of my larger ships. Now, why is that? Reason is the good old element number bug. Active element number bug. And due to that, if you have a large ship, you want to try to reduce the amount of active elements. Active elements, that is your Atmo engines and any kind of aerofoil, meaning stabilizers, wings, ailerons. And you just want to not go above a certain number. And if you are, you don't want to go that much higher. Reason is it will actually slow down your travel speed. So it will, if you fly, it will display, let's say, 1,000 kilometers per hour while you're flying in atmosphere, but you're not actually going 1,000. You're going significantly slower. It may still be worth it to use a ship that has that bug. If, for example, going only one time, but at a slightly reduced speed, is still better than going twice. If you are only in Atmo, so that you can go into space, and usually in open space you won't be bugged then, it may be a good idea. But for the most part, no. And if you're only 20% bugged, and especially if you don't know about the bug, you won't notice. I mean, if you were to fly without the interface, if you were to turn off the interface and just fly, do you know the difference between flying at 800 and 1,000? Do you notice that? I don't. If I'm flying at 400 and somebody tells me we're flying 1,000, then yeah, maybe I would be a bit suspicious. But if I think I'm flying 1,000, I'm actually only flying 800, I don't notice. Which is why I wrote a script for it. Which was then improved by people who actually know what they're doing. I think it's actually been implemented into some of the HUDs now. I think Arc actually wants to put that in as a debug feature. Woo! So while this ship is still alright, that one isn't. As a rule of thumb, if you, without AGG, can carry around let's say 15 kilotons, you probably have the element number bug, and you may want to test for it. Yeah, your ship will just be slower, and if you were to do the math, hey, how long does it take me to fly 10 kilometers? And then you find out, it should be that and that long. And then you measure the time, and then you see, it actually takes me twice as long. Am I not flying 1,000 right now? No, you aren't. Your element number bugged. Yeah, you're actually only flying at half speed. So most of those really nice, large ships that are on displays at some places and that you see posted in the Discord and so on, those really big ones with the 40, 50 Admiral engines in the back and so on, those all fly at half speed. So if you have one of those, we can do a lovely bet. I fly in some kind of shuttle. I fly at 700. Have a friend VR over and sit next to me to confirm that I'm only flying 700. I fly cruise control 700 in Atmo, and you try to overtake me. We can bet money on it. Quanta. We can bet in-game money on it. You won't be able to overtake me. Well, not without burning up. Because while your ship displays 1,000, it doesn't go 1,000. It only goes half that speed. So that is the element number bug. Asking the Discord and the Lure channel for the script for that. One last thing I have is the AGG versus normal hybrid. Hooray! So AGGs, where there. Let's have those as a lovely backdrop, you know. Do my angel-like voice. So what does the AGG do? The AGG. This is, by the way, boring if you already have one and use one. So you can now end the video. But for those who don't know, the AGG is the anti-gravity generator. And what it does when you have it on your ship is that it takes away the whole part about the gravity, where you know, usually you fall. Well, now you don't. And you set it to a certain altitude, and you activate it. Actually walk up to it and click activate. If you are at or close to that altitude that you set it to, you will then no longer fall if you are at that altitude. So you set it, for example, to 1,500. You would then have to buy, with your own means, by your own normal force, you know, engines and wings and stuff. You would have to get to that altitude or close to it. The AGG would then help you as you get closer. And if you are then at that altitude, you can turn your engines off, you can decelerate, and you just hang in the air at that altitude. You're safe there, you don't have to land. Also means that once you are at that altitude, you can actually take all of your wings and engines off, because now you have the AGG to hold you there. You may want to transport those parts then down to your base at some point, because if you have them in the container, it's kind of pointless. Sell them. And the AGG can also lift you up and down, but it can only do so at a speed of 4 meters per second. So, I mean, you are then at maybe 1.5 kilometers in the air, and you use your container link range. Use a compactable craft to fly up there. Use the container link range to load and unload your containers, or you link to the container up there, jump down, build the containers, force respawn up again, something like that. And then you can, of course, go wherever you want to. But in order to go higher, you have to set the new AGG height. And that only goes at 4 meters per second. And you can't even go all the way to the ground. You have to, you can only go up to, down to 1,000 meters altitude. But unlimited mass hanging in the air. That's quite nice. And then you go wherever you want to, and then stop it in mid-air again, and then you just jump down, have your container linked, and you can sail or try it or whatever you want to, and then return. So it does have advantages, but it can be rather slow. And personally, while I have AGGs available, I usually don't use them. I'm on the other side of the planet, as seen from the districts, and I just put any amount of stuff I want to buy or sell, any amount of stuff I want to sell. Sorry, brain fart. Into my craft, and then I just, you know, take off orbit to the market, sell my stuff, put my ore in, and then same way back. And an AGG would be a lot slower doing that. But depending on what you do, it might be a really nice idea. If you have huge amounts of cargo, for example, you trade sand, maybe a great idea if it's some kind of large org and you've got 10 miners working all week on Thales and then you want to slow boat it over to Alioth, then yeah, AGG. If you have one of them fancy AGG towers and can just land your ship at 5 kilometers altitude, although that means that other people just crash into your towers all the time, you can do that. So the AGG does have its uses, but if you are not a large corp, you just usually one person flying from A to B quickly. The AGG may not be the best tool for the job. It does have advantages, it does have disadvantages, and depending on what exactly the job is, it may help you or it may be pointless. It really depends on what exactly you're trying to do. When you want to use an AGG, by the way, you have to. I think you have to. You have to use some kind of custom Lua script. Otherwise, if you only activate it, it only goes to 1,000 meters, and you can't change the altitude. It's very easy to write your own Lua. Even I did it. Really easy to write your own Lua script to just have some kind of basic functionality. But if you really want to use an AGG daily, it's probably a good idea to download one of the well-known huts. That will make it a lot easier. So I think the AGG is the only item for flying right now where you really have a large benefit when you use one of the custom huts and don't use the one that's in the game. But then again, as I don't use AGGs, I still fly vanilla. Okay, I think that about covers everything, including stuff that nobody cares about. I hope some of that was interesting to you. And let me know if there's something I missed or got wrong. Or got wrong, yeah. Have a nice day. See ya. Do I have an outro?